Just another YouTuber with coffee. Nothing to see here. Hey, US, so here's my entire workflow on my custom profile of Cine2 and s-Cinetone. In my last video with s-Cinetone, I dropped at the very end, I said what my custom picture profile was gonna be. It was a combination of s-Cinetone with Cine2, and everybody was, all right, like 3 people, maybe 4 people asked about, hey, how are you doing that? Show us the entire workflow, A to Z. So for all 4 of you, I'm gonna run you through everything from in-camera settings all the way through Premiere, and with an export of this entire picture profile that's working really well for me. And even though only a couple people are asking for it, I do think that it's one of the most consistent picture profiles that I've ever used. I am loving the results that I'm getting, and I'm gonna be using this one for the long term. I did notice in the comments too that people were asking about the suggestions that I was making in the last Cinetone video, which if I haven't linked it yet, I'll link it up top here. You should check those out because it will give a bit more of a backstory and some of the settings behind all this today. Anyways, I got some questions that were saying, hey, does this work in outdoor settings? Does your exposure suggestions, does the picture profile, does it work outdoor on top of just in the studio? Short answer is yes, and the long answer is I have some outdoor footage, some very standard and basic outdoor footage that we'll look at in Premiere, and I'll show you how my exposure suggestions as well as my picture profile works outdoors as well. All right, so that picture profile, because I can't stand it in YouTube videos when someone says they got the best picture profile, they customize it, it's great, you should try it, and they wait till the very end to tell you. I'm just gonna tell you right now, I do have something at the very end that's gonna be kind of a cool guide and a way to show you all this stuff and pull everything together. But in short, I'm gonna put that picture profile up on screen right now. Doesn't matter which picture profile container you use, I'm choosing to use picture profile 3. You just wanna make sure you go all the way down, reset the entire picture profile, and here's the only things that I change. I make it for Cine2, I go to s-Cinetone. I am bumping the saturation up to +2, nothing crazy there. I just noticed that I constantly was adding more saturation in post. Still do a little bit, but it just helps give a little bit of kick in the short term. And last thing, under detail, for 4K footage, which I'm shooting in right now, I bring that down to -2, and I do bring the detail to 0 if I happen to be shooting in 1080, which I know on the A7s3, shooting in 1080 is like blasphemy, but I do it at times, and you do it too, I know you do. Quick turnaround projects, 1080, anybody else? Anyways, that's the custom picture profile. Now let's talk through everything for how to get your shot to turn out really clean. Now, 2 things about this that I know I've said in previous videos, I'm just gonna say it again. I'm mostly speaking to myself because I wish I knew this early on with filmmaking and was better at doing it and practiced more. You have to get your exposure and your white balance right. If you don't get either of those things right, you can still recover it in post. It's just gonna be really hard to get a consistent look. And it's more so gonna be really hard to get the look that the creator or the person suggesting it is getting. That being said, for exposure, for skin tones, I go to 85% on the zebras. Whether I'm in a studio, whether I'm outdoors, I'm gonna prioritize the skin tone at 85% and manipulate the other lighting to get the type of exposure that I want to, if I'm able to. And if you're not sure exactly how to use zebras to get exposure, I did a video up here that's pretty extensive on the A7s3 in general, but it will get into exactly how to use zebras to get the exposure at a certain % value on the zebras. And the good news is that in that same video, I also talk about how to nail your white balance, at least the 2 ways that I do it, whether I'm custom setting based off of my key light or I'm using the auto white balance lock feature. I get into those details in that video as well. So let's jump into Premiere and let's work with a few different clips that show off this picture profile and why I love how consistent the results I'm getting. After that, we'll jump back out of Premiere. I'll do full exports on all the clips that we're looking at so you can see them at the highest resolution that YouTube will allow me to put up. And then I'll talk about a quick way to pull everything together that we've been talking about. And I have a little bonus at the very end too, which hopefully you stick around for, but if you don't, I understand. All right, anyways, jump into Premiere, here we go. And as I wait for Premiere to load, I just realized I shot that entire intro clip, well, technically the intro and the outro, and now I'm filming this middle section, so you're gonna see this issue in both what earlier as well as once we get to the conclusions here. I shot it without my rim light, so turned it on now, so those of you who realize that, you are huge nerds. I mean, I guess I realized it too, so takes one to know one. Anyways, check it out. Rim light on, and the earlier clips, no rim light. Rim light, no rim light. So just kind of a fun thing to show you there, the importance of a rim light and creating some separation off of that background. All right, now Premiere. All right, 4 clips loaded up. I've got a product style shot here, which for this one, I exposed to 90% on the zebras. I think I forgot to mention that earlier. For skin tones, I exposed to 85%. For non-skin tone dominant subjects, I prioritize the exposure on the zebras to 90% for this picture profile. So the brightest part of the camera and lens there, right at 90%. I have this very uninteresting background, but just a vlog style shot where I make some pretty dumb faces in, so sorry for that. And then I have a fitness style shot. I shoot this stuff a lot. And then over here is just gonna be this main angle, and we'll close out with that one. So let's grade these things up. First thing I would do is I would grab an adjustment layer, pop that on top of the clip. I'm just gonna option drag over the next one, option drag the next one, and option drag to the next one. Make sure these line up on the actual clip in terms of length. And then from there, I always want to have 2 layers of this. I'll show you why in a second. Just option drag those up, and now I have my workspace here to work in. And first thing I would do to that top adjustment layer is I would add my stylized look, which is this Lens Distortions Dark Monochrome 1. I'll put this in the description down below. I've got no affiliation with this whatsoever. I just like the LUT a lot. And I usually bring that down to about 40%, mostly for skin tone dominant shots. So I might bring this up a little bit for this product style shot. It'll probably live around 40%, if at all, for this shot. This will be an interesting one to see if I like how that looks on there. Either way, for this first clip, I've got that on there, dropped it down to 40%. Don't do anything else in that adjustment layer, do all my corrections and everything else on this first layer. So first thing I would do here is I would just add a slight S-curve into it and kind of get some contrast back into this clip. With this Cine2 s-Cinetone picture profile, if I turn this effect off, you can just see it's still pretty flat, not nearly as flat as like an S-Log, but we still want to add some contrast and saturation to the clip. Cue the fan noise on the MacBook Pro, gotta love it. All right, so we added some contrast in with this curve. Next thing I would do is I would probably bring the saturation up, typically to about 110. I might play with that at the end, but we'll see what that's gonna do. And from there, I'm also going to then get my darks and highlights right. I want the bottom of the information, the blacks, to be as close to 0 as possible, and it doesn't take much with this picture profile to get them there. And that, I'm losing a little bit of information and bring them down that low, so that's probably gonna be good. I'm gonna leave the shadows alone. I'm just gonna bump the whites around and see what we're getting, and it looks like that information over here is about 90+% on the highlights, so I wanna be careful with this. I'm actually gonna bring that down just a little bit, and highlight's gonna come down just a touch. I bring contrast up typically to about +10, and if I just turn this on and off, and that lens distortion LUT being on top, that's still on, so I'm gonna turn that off so we can get a look at this. This is pre, and then everything we just did, we're adding contrast and saturation back into the image, stretching out some of this information. When I turn that lens distortion back on, we get some of those blues. Last thing here, a bit unorthodox, I'm gonna bump my exposure just slightly to get a little more dynamic range out of the blacks back there. Make sure I didn't clip anything too hard over here on my highlights, which I'm good with all of that. Couple pieces clipped out, looks like some spots on the lens, which makes sense. Those are reflections of light. To combat that, I might squeeze the highlights down just a touch. If I were to bring the shadows up, which nope, I don't like that. I like the contrast we get with the shadows right there in the middle. I would say that this clip is done. Next shot here, very vlog style shot. Like I said, I did some outdoor stuff here, still exposed the skin tone to 85%. And blew out the highlights, but in a shot like this, I'm gonna prioritize the skin tone. I'm not too concerned about those highlights. Even though in the sky, we still kept a little bit of detail, just not a tremendous amount, which is to be expected. And from here, first thing I would do is let's put that look on. I feel like I'm not gonna like it. I typically don't for like an outdoor. Yeah, I don't like those tones at all. I know I could bring it back and maybe I'll like the tones a little better, but I just don't think that's helping anything. So we're gonna take that off. We might come back to that later. So just like last time, I'm just gonna apply a slight S-curve to this shot to get a little bit of contrast out of it. And we can already see what that's doing. Flat picture profile out of camera, a little bit of contrast added back in. We need a touch of saturation, so let's go 110. I'm liking what that's doing. I might pull that back just a tiny, tiny bit. Good, and then from there, same idea. I'm gonna make sure my blacks are right, which I don't have much space here whatsoever before I lose detail, which when doing blacks, you wanna make sure that the lowest part of information is just above that line of 0. I will break that rule at times. Might do that with the fitness shoot, we'll see. But keeping that just above 0. My whites, again, the top of this information up here, that's all the sky that's blown out. No surprise there. I'm just gonna bring it down a touch because I wanna bump the exposure on this one too to 0.2. Do that with a lot of my footage. Just kind of brightens the whole thing up, even though I could just adjust that with the whites. Bring that back down. Highlights gonna come down just a touch on the highlights, not much there. Bringing the shadows up on this shot to get a little bit of detail. I want to be careful, I don't want to flatten out the image. That's what we're trying to do the opposite of. It comes out pretty flat, but just to get a little bit of detail on my shirt there. And contrast, I will typically, almost in every shot, bump that up to at least +10. So with that effect on and off, we're not doing much here. Outdoor shot, it's already pretty flat as opposed to that studio shot, which had a bunch of contrast to it. But if I was doing a vlog style shot, this picture profile at 85% on the skin tones, I think it works just fine. Granted, there's no lighting here. It's the middle of the day. It's not gonna be a great looking image either way. I'm happy with what that's producing. And back under the creative tab, let's jump up to this look layer, this adjustment layer that's all the way up top. I didn't like what the dark monochrome was doing, but Lens Distortion has this earthy monochrome, which I don't love how it adds some pinks in there, but if we pull that back, I do like the look that that gets. It's extremely subtle. It kind of deafens some of those greens and kind of brightens up the skin tone a little bit. And like I said, I might even pull that back a little bit further because I don't love the overall look of it with those pinks, but bringing it way back in here, I think it adds a little bit to the image that makes it just look a little more stylized, but it's not doing too much. And moving into this fitness shot, just as the fans and the MacBook pick up, it's great timing there, but do a lot of shots like this, and I actually needed this shot anyway, so it's good timing. But with this one, I know exactly how this is gonna grade because this is most of the stuff that I do. Going back to that look, I'm gonna drop that dark monochrome one, bring it back into the 40s, which that reminds me, going back to this clip, I might actually have a little bit of space here to bring that one up, which I do. I like how that looks, adding a little bit more of that look in there. Won't do that with skin tones like I mentioned, typically keeping that closer to 40. I'm good with that. And from there, I'm gonna do my tweaks. I like seeing what the stylized kind of tones bring in before I do that overall grade. So here we are in the grade, and I'm on this first adjustment layer. I'm gonna pop into curves, and you guessed it, make a slight S curve, starting with the shadows. And I can't do too much here. I wanna be careful to not lose too much information. So slight S curve, and we can see what that's doing to the image already. Next thing, I'm gonna pump in some saturation, 110. Pop that up, I'm liking what that's doing. And then I wanna get my black levels just right. So I wanna make sure I get contrast here, which is what I'm gonna get by bringing the blacks down. Starting to lose some information right here, which that's probably the shadows underneath this split squat stand. I'm okay if I lose a little bit of that because I want to prioritize the contrast off of the subject here. And my whites, I have some space to move these around a little bit too. Skin tone being this line right here, that's my face. I don't want to blow that out, obviously that's going to look crazy, but I do want to brighten it up and maybe go even, at this point I'm closer to 95, which I'm actually okay with for this shot. In fact, let's bring that back down closer to 85 or 90. I'm going to bring the overall exposure of the image up to get some of the shadows to come up too, and that's putting me in a similar place that I was trying to get to with these whites. Can maybe bring those up a touch. So there's what we're getting so far. Contrast is going to go to +10. Add some nice look back into that, and then my highlights, I can bring those down a touch, but I don't want to lose the life in the skin or some of these highlights that are bouncing off the left side and the top of the image. I like how those are looking a lot. And I would say that we're looking really good here. You might have noticed that with this Cine 2 s-Cinetone picture profile, this custom picture profile I'm working with, you don't need to do much. Add some contrast, add some saturation, get your highlights and your shadows right, and you're good to go. This last shot, that main angle, the one that you've all been looking at already all day. Simple, same mechanics we've already talked about. First thing, pop that lens distortion LUT on, bring it back into the 40s, go back to my first adjustment layer, go into my curves. I'm gonna bring a little bit of contrast back into this. Want to be careful, you can start to see how fast we lose the darks and the shadows back behind me. That's good. Skin tone is right at between 85 and 90%, which is what I was going for with the zebra exposure anyway. Let's see if we can get a straight on piece of this. There we go. And then from there, it's going to be a matter of the basic panel and going through my whites, highlights, and shadows. I'll bring the shadows up a little bit so we don't lose too much information off of that backdrop. Counter that by bringing the blacks down just to the point where we start to lose some information. I'm gonna be losing a little bit here on the far left of the image, it looks like. That's probably this shadow up top. From there, I'm gonna bump contrast to +10, getting some nice contrast off the image, obviously. Bring the exposure plus 0.2, and after I do that, when I bring the highlights down a little bit, get some more detail back in the highlights, but overall brighten the image up with that +2. And that's the changes that we're making there. So you can see it's pretty flat with the adjustments turned off. We turn it on, we get the contrast back and a little bit of saturation back into it. Once we bring that to 110, of course, that's where that saturation comes in. And besides the fact that I forgot the rim light, which would have been showing right up around here, which is unfortunate because I really need that rim light for this shot just to help give a little bit of light punch on my shoulder and the back of my head to pop off of that background. Besides that, I'm pretty happy with how this one is looking. So there you have it. That's my entire workflow from setting up this picture profile all the way through how I work with it in Premiere. Now, if you want to try out my custom picture profile, I made a quick guide. It's free. You can check it out in the link below. Just pulls together my exposure suggestions as well as the settings for the picture profile. Just a quick cheat sheet to pull all that stuff together for you. And if you're using this picture profile and you're getting good results, tag me on Instagram, put it in the comments down below in this video. Find a way, send a messenger pigeon. Find a way to let me know that you're using this successfully, because I'd love to see the footage that you're able to create. But that's gonna do it for me. My name is Sean DeWispelaire. This channel is all about the skills behind the art of creativity, photography, videography, editing, gear, reviews, tutorials, and me being full-time in the fitness industry, it's always gonna have just a little bit of a fitness feel to it. So if any of that is something that you're into, hit the subscribe button down below so you can be a part of all the future videos. Give this video a tap on the thumbs up if it has helped you at all, and I will look forward to seeing all of you in the next video. Take care. See ya. Use my intro song? Man, your attention to detail. So my drone giveaway that I did in my studio tour video, the winner Thomas out in Ireland, just an exceptional dude, but not only was he extremely grateful and some of the nice things he was saying back after he had won the drone, but he made a video of him getting it and unboxing it. Just fantastic, man. This is the reason why I do this, is to connect with such cool people. So I'm gonna play the rest of this video, at least a part of it, up on screen here. Y'all check it out. Go give Thomas some love. He's been talking about starting like full on a YouTube channel, and I think we need to encourage him to do that. So join me in finding a way to encourage him. He's extremely talented to get his channel up and going.
There's more goodies in here. That's the battery. Wow, the controller feels so amazing. We don't need any of that? Wow, man. Absolutely beautiful. All of them NDs from Color Pro. Let's break straight away.
Took me forever to figure out how to open those two.
Legit. Wow.
There you go.
Sean, thanks so much for that, man. I couldn't be more happier. Thanks really so much for this, and let me just get a camera closer.